Hey, what's going on, guys? It's VidJaGameGuy here, and welcome to part 2 of my Zeta Gundam review and discussion for Journey Through the Universal Century. This part is going to cover what I call plot and stuff, as it's some overall plot details and specific things throughout the show I just want to cover, like arcs and themes and whatnot, so hence the name plot and stuff, instead of just plot. Well, the last video was pretty long, so let's just get into the video. When it comes to Zeta Gundam's story, I'm gonna be honest and say I'm not a big fan. I think some of it was pretty good, but overall, the story about characters I'm not that big a fan of is hard for me to enjoy, and if you've seen part 1, you know how I feel about the characters in this show. I would say the beginning of the show before the argument lands on Earth was somewhat lackluster in my opinion, combined with still having Camille be a very hard sell. A lot of that was covered in part 1, by the way, so I'm just gonna move on. The Jaburo episode was very interesting as it showed just what the Titans were willing to do in nuking Jaburo, and the episode was full of suspense and asking if everyone was gonna make it out. Then Amuro is reintroduced, which added a very interesting dynamic. Not much to say that I didn't cover in the first part of this video when I talked about Amuro. Then we get into probably the best part of Zeta Gundam, which is Hong Kong City, baby! Woo! And boy, is there a lot to talk about here. Here's where Camille starts to become bearable, if not a hopeless romantic upon meeting 4. 4 introduces us to the idea of cyber new types, which, as I've actually seen everything for the journey at this time, they'll be prevalent for a while. So, Camille and 4 enjoy each other's company and love that allows both characters to grow. Camille, in that, he learns to have more compassion and understanding and act like a semi-normal human being instead of an absolute psychopath. And 4, as she feels more normal. It's a little weird how quick it is, but I chop it up to new type connection. This conflicts with 4's mission and the idea of getting her memories back. This memory thing drives me a little crazy, though, as I was convinced she was artificially created and the memories thing is just implanted to give the Titans better control. Or she can't get them back anyway if she wasn't created. So it drives me nuts that Camille never tries to get her on the Argama, so she just... Hey guys, I just want to clarify that there is one scene where Camille does have a small conversation with her to try and get her back, and that I might have screwed up a little bit on this part in this argument. This argument more applies to 4's return, and so we'll talk about it more when I get there. I just want to admit that I may have been a little bit wrong about this part. Goes back, and the Titans force her into the Psycho Gundam that causes her to go psycho, no pun intended, which eventually causes Camille to have a hard time shooting her down later as he loves her. This makes sense, of course, because, as I said, Camille's in love with her, and the only thing that really upsets me about this arc is the fact that Camille does not try harder to turn 4 to their side. That makes me so mad. That's something I hate about this show. But then there's the next space arc, where Quattro/Char stays on Earth, and that arc really starts hammering home that Sirocco is the true villain, introduces the Zeta and the Methys, and of course introduces the relationship between Sarah and Katz, that makes me want to bash my head against the wall! It makes Katz look like an idiot, which, let's be honest, he is, as there is no reason he should even like Sarah, and starts this thing where Sarah says on multiple occasions that she likes Katz, but never actually shows it in any way, as she is so devoted to Sirocco for God knows why. God, I hate Sarah and Katz. Next, there's the Rakoa garbage that starts. I covered that in the last video, and I don't feel like wasting more brain cells or air on that bullcrap, so we're just gonna move on. And then one of the main things I hate in Zeta, again, Gas the Colony episodes. There are actually like 3 or 4 episodes which follow the same format of the Titans try to gas a colony and the AEUG tries to stop them. I cannot stand this, as not only is it repetitive, but it makes no sense. Like, I to this day cannot figure out why the Titans keep trying, and succeeding once with the help of Requa, to gas colonies.
Why? Why?
There is no narrative development gained from them trying it. They don't gain anything by doing it. It makes no sense. The best answer I've heard is, they were trying to strike fear into the space people, and that's stupid, though, because they've already done that, and it drove me a little nuts that I felt like I watched the same episode 3 separate times. The next remarkable moment to talk about is the AEUG's conversation with Axis, which goes to crap because of Char spawning the most famous and or funny line Char's ever spoken.
I've never betrayed anyone in my entire life.
I understand that in the context it can be taken as this big moment of, oh my gosh, he's never believed himself to be on anyone's side but his own his whole life, making it more sense and be an interesting insight into Char as a person. But that doesn't change the fact that the first time I saw that line, before someone pointed out the possible other implication of the line, I was laughing my ass off. I cannot believe he actually says that. But on another note, my main problem with this episode stems partly from the things I covered about Haman and the villains in the show in part 1. And that is, I don't understand why Char's so angry. I have to assume that it's because Haman is manipulating Minerva, but I hate having to make that assumption without a little more evidence. The lack of reasoning actually kind of makes Char out to be an ass for screwing everything up in this episode. The next notable thing, though, I want to talk about is Four's return. I might have missed something, but it seemed pretty clear that she died earlier in the show, and these 2 episodes we have her back didn't do anything to improve Camille's storyline with Four, in my opinion, and actually inflated my feelings of, god dang it, Camille, just take her on the freaking Argama and leave. It's not that hard. You're right effing there, man. But other than that, this felt kind of pointless to me. Let's move on. Then comes the day of Dakar, one of, if not the best episode of Zeta Gundam. This episode finally puts words into the movement and is the climax of Char's character arc into the importance of who he is and the power he has as a politician instead of a soldier. The speech he gives is also great insight into his future plans with Char's counterattack, which I have seen at the time of recording. I also think that now reading it in text, it helps with an understanding of the plot, not just for Zeta Gundam, but for everything up to at least Char's counterattack, which was kind of needed, because I don't know if it's just me, but there were a lot of times watching this show that I didn't really understand why they were doing things or the direction they were going with the show. Then we have the Rosamia arc, which in hindsight and after listening to some other stuff on it, I see the purpose of, but still don't think it's great. While the Rosamia part definitely highlights some of Camille's growth and both his overall character and how to deal with cyber new types, it still didn't stand out to me. It was accompanied by the introduction of the stupidest looking mobile suit ever, the Bound Dock. Still baffles me that got past the idea stage, let alone production. And other than that, it felt lackluster and it was just plain weird at some parts, which I guess is kind of to be expected when talking about cyber new types. And now we can finally talk about the finale, and whoa boy, is there a lot to talk about. This is definitely one of the most shocking, and if you were invested in the characters, unlike I was, emotional endings to a show. I'd heard that there was a point in Zeta Gundam where everyone just starts dying, but I didn't expect Tomino to basically clean house in the last 2 episodes of the show. I mean, this is by far one of the most shocking endings to a show I've ever watched. But my problem is that I actually found myself laughing at the absurd number of deaths and wasn't really that invested because at this point I was really trying to push through the end of the show, and frankly, as was made pretty clear in the first part with characters, really didn't have an emotional connection to any of these characters besides Bright. So I was actually happy to see Tomino clean house, so I didn't have to see the characters like Katz and Rakoa again. And then they cemented Jared's devolving rivalry with Camille as the worst rivalry ever by ending everything in a big wet fart. Though I will commend Kat's death by almost making me spit out my drink in laughter as he crashes into an asteroid like an absolute dumbass. Emma's death, preceded by Hankins, though, was actually one that made me go, oh man, I actually kind of like those characters. I didn't really mind them, which was rare for this show. I have to say, though, the final battle was actually cool, as all the faction leaders, fighting inside the laser. It's an interesting set piece to choose, and I did enjoy that. The quick thing I want to bring up, though, is the fact that Camille does have that power-up moment because of his new type power interacting with the biosensors. So I don't understand why I've seen people saying that Unicorn made new types have space magic when it was clearly a thing all the way back in Zeta. I'll talk more about that in future reviews as we go through this series, but I just wanted to put that out there because that double standard really pisses me off, especially considering how much I adore Unicorn. The last moment is when Camille probably does the coolest thing that he does in the whole show, and maybe even the coolest thing of the whole show, and rams the Wave Rider into Siroko's cockpit through Sirocco, though Sirocco gets it back with that mind crush that puts Camille into a coma. And after all that, it's finally over. All the way to the end, I just can't figure out what makes this show so appealing to people. I barely got through it at all. Hopefully some of you can tell me why, because I just feel the negatives far outweigh the positives to me when it comes to Zeta Gundam. It's definitely a lot more sprawling and ambitious than the original, but there are some times where it feels like that actually backfired. I can respect some of the things it did, such as the panoramic monitor introduction and the introduction of transforming mobile suits, and it had pretty animation for the time. But that doesn't really redeem all the negative qualities like the horrible characters and some other stuff I probably talked about in part 1 and over the course of this video. I am excited to talk about Double Zeta next though, as it seems like my usual opinions deviate from the norm I see online when it comes to Gundam shows, and especially Double Zeta in particular. But before I can make that video, we've got one more thing to cover in Zeta Gundam, and you know what it is, man. It's the mobile suits. What better way to start off than with the titular suit itself, the Zeta Gundam. The Zeta Gundam has a fantastic design and its sleek look with the classic Gundam color scheme and a really cool transformation function. I've gotta say, I really like it, though I definitely feel I got a little tired of it eventually by the time I finished Double Zeta, as that's almost 100 episodes with the same Gundam. For the Gundam Mark II, Camille's prior unit, to the Zeta, I am with the consensus that it took about everything from the original Gundam and made it better, except for one thing, and that's the color scheme. I actually prefer the bright color scheme to the more realistic military two-tone bland colors, as it sometimes makes it boring to look at. The Methys, continuing with our Federation mobile suits, I actually love the design of the Methys. I think its flight form is sick, and was sad to see it basically do nothing but get beat up, because Fa sucks at piloting and Rakoa was only in it a few times before a character finished shitting on itself. Wish the Methys got more screen time. But an amazing looking unit with a great pilot is the Hyakushiki. This thing has an amazing headpiece design, yellow beam saber, love that, and is decked out in so much awesome gold, it's fit for a king. Thus, it's piloted by Char Quattrobagina Aznable. I think the Rick DS is just like the Rick Dom from the original Mobile Suit Gundam. I think it has an awesome design and is interesting for having its cockpit in the head instead of the chest like most mobile suits. And to end the AEUG suits, we got the Dija. I really don't know what the heck I'm looking at. Or why I think it actually looks cool. Don't get me wrong, it's wacky. But somehow, it pulls it off in my opinion. Now on to the Titan suits, and boy howdy, are there a boatload of these in the show. They were throwing these things right from the factory into the fray, and some of the designs get weird. We'll start with the Ashmar for one reason and one reason only. It looks like it's wearing a life jacket, and when it transforms into its flight mode, it looks like it has an orange life preserver on top of it. And I think that's hilarious. I think it's stupid, but stupidly endearing, like a child's drawing you put on the fridge. One mobile suit I think is just stupid, however, and you can definitely tell from the first part and some of the things I've said in this video already, the Bound Dock. The Bound Dock may be the stupidest design I've ever seen. Its mobile armor form is weird, but not horrible. And then it transforms. And I'm just like, what the hell were you thinking when you designed this thing? What the fuck am I looking at? There's not much more I can do than look at it and blink in how this thing got made, both in-universe and out. I'm also not the big fan of the Psycho Gundams. They were just too big and bland. There wasn't a lot going on with the design that interested me, and I thought the blocky transformed state was kind of stupid. But back to weird designs, we can't forget the Space Manta Ray, the Hammurabi. I really don't know what else to say. It's a suit I still think about. Sometimes I wake up thinking it's cool and interesting design, and other days I wake up thinking it's stupid. Guess it depends on how I wake up in the morning. When it comes to some of the other mobile suits like the Guplant and the Masala, I think the designs are pretty cool, though I probably prefer the Plant, but they didn't stand out to me that much. One random suit that did stand out to me, though, is the Byerlin. The Byerlin is amazing. The fact that Jared gave this thing up for the Bound Dock still pisses me off. Everything about the Byerlin's design is just awesome in my opinion, and I wish we'd gotten to see more of it. Another mobile suit that wasn't used a lot with a cool design was the Pallas Athene. I really like the color of the mobile suit, and it's like alien design. It's definitely a one-up to the Balinox Saman. I don't even know how to say that. Not that I like the pilots for either of those suits, though. But we can't talk about these two without the weirdest and possibly the dumbest Gundam name ever. The O. While we didn't see much of it, that name cemented it somewhere in my brain. Or sometimes I just go, the O, huh? Well, that's the mobile suits. Just really want to talk about, so let's wrap this one up. In the end, I just don't feel that Zeta Gundam is a good show. Most of the characters are awful. The plot felt like it was all over the place at times. None of the fights were spectacular, and a lot of them were repetitive. And most of the mobile suits were average at best. I understand the importance of this show and how it helped revive Gundam, and if you enjoy the show or even think it's the best, fantastic, good for you, but I just don't see it. And as I've been saying, I'd love to hear why you love it in the comments so I can understand it better. If you also hate it, leave that down in the comments too. Zeta Gundam may have been a rough patch for my journey through the Universal Century, but Double Zeta Gundam is up next, and I actually have a decently positive opinion on that show, but obviously, that's to come in the next video. And if you want to see that video and stay up to date with all my content, please subscribe, and I'll see all of you in the next video.